What's up, everybody? Brett Okamoto from ESPN. It is my favorite time of the week. It is the time for UFC Best Bets with my good friends, James Krause, UFC fighter, UFC coach down there in Kansas City. And then, of course, Nick Kalikas from the Circus Sportsbook here in Las Vegas, taking bets, talking about bets. And we got some bets to talk about this weekend, UFC Fight Night middleweight main event between Jared Cannonier and Kelvin Gastelum. Before we get there, let's go back 2 weeks. We had a rare week off, no action last week. But then before that was UFC 265 in Houston. James is absolutely showing off at this point. He's not just picking guys to win. He's telling us how they're going to do it. He said,
I don't just pick the how, I pick the round.
And the round too. Johnny Munoz Jr. And you told us, hey, you know what? If you want to make the odds a little bit more in your favor, go ahead and do it by submission. He did it by submission. I forget exactly what that was, but it was plus money on the submission. And you got the feeling just watching that fight within the first 2 minutes. You're like, oh, James is right about this again, man. This guy's going to win by submission. He did.
Kid's a stud, man. He's good. He's really good.
I can tell, man. He's tough. And I think those, in the future, the odds are going to be up on Johnny Munoz because I think the sports books are going to notice that guy is good as well. Nick, you were one of the many, many people I talked to that were on Michael Chiesa. We got to stop doubting Vicente Luque, I suppose, man. I mean, that guy, he gets in bad situations oftentimes in his fights, still wins. It's looking like a title challenger. I'm interested in seeing him fight Kamaru Usman, but we'll save that discussion for another day. For now, let's go to this weekend's card. It's at the UFC Apex. Again, Jared Cannonier versus Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin took this fight, I guess, technically on short notice. He was not Cannonier's original opponent, but he took it in early June. So it's really not a short notice fight. It's just not a fight that he had originally signed up for. He fills in for Paulo Costa. Gastelum is the underdog, though. I'm seeing him at plus 130 at Caesars. Cannonier, the favorite at minus 155. Nick, let's go to you first. Man, I have a hard time kind of handicapping Jared Cannonier, to be honest with you, because he hasn't been super active over the last few years. And you look at his losses that he has. When he was at 205, he only lost to the very best, Blachowicz, Teixeira, Dominic Reyes, and then in 185, he's only had one loss, but it was to Whitaker. And otherwise, he's looked kind of like a world beater out there, but it's against guys that some of them, quite frankly, are not even in the UFC anymore. So are you kind of with me on that? How are you trying to handicap Jared Cannonier?
It is tough. Exactly what you just said, because sometimes he looks like he could be a true contender, and other times he just is a little flat. It doesn't kind of live up to what we expect from him as well. And like you said, level competition, hit or miss, but he's been in there some quality competition and has some solid wins. But since he dropped down to this weight class, of course, 185 pounds, I think it fits well. I mean, the guy looks great. He's performed relatively well. So I think he's legit. It is very difficult to cap his fights, and to be on, especially laying the chalk on his side, I think is a little risky, in this spot here as we're sitting. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But yeah, I think it's very difficult to cap Cannonier fights, no doubt.
Yeah, James, are you kind of with me? Are you having a hard time kind of figuring? Because it seems like he dominates the guys that we kind of think he should dominate, but then he hasn't really kind of got over that hump and beat the elite of the elite in any of these divisions. So where are you at in terms of just where his ceiling is, especially at age 37?
It is extremely difficult for me to put chalk on him. He's only losing to the greats, right? Like the really, really good guys. That being said, he hasn't really beat that high competition, the high level of competition either. So it's like you want to say like he's beating guys here, he's losing the guys here, but there's a big gap in between where you're not sure where he falls, right? But we know where Gastelum falls, right? Gastelum is here. He's been competing against the who's who for a long time, and let's be honest, like he's probably a welterweight, and he's made welterweight before, so he's even a little undersized at that weight class and is still competing against the best of the best. He's only lost to the elites of the division. He's beat a couple of the really good guys. I mean, he knocked Michael Bisping out, and Bisping never really had a lull. It's not like he was losing fights a ton here and there. He's always been good, and when I flatline him, he's beat good guys.
He was right there with Izzy, too. Right there with Izzy in terms of...
right there with Izzy. And I don't know if that fight goes like that again. I think that was his shot to get it. Mm-hmm. But, man, it's from a betting perspective, it's just really difficult to bet against a guy that hasn't really shown us, like, exactly where he is. We know Cannonier's good. Like, I agree with Nick a ton. Like, he's good. There's no doubt, like, he's good. But, like, where does he fall in that big gap? And, like, I don't know that answer. Mm-hmm. I know he's up there. But man, Kelvin has proven time and time again that he belongs in that upper echelon with the elites in the division. So from a betting perspective, I love both these guys. Massive respect from a competitor, from a coach, from a fan, all that for both these guys. They're right there. But from a betting perspective, it's really hard for me to say, hey, let's favor Jared Cannonier right here.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't, like, I just don't see, to me, they're here, you know, and this is a true coin flip fight in my opinion. And if I had gun to my head, you guys hear me say this a lot, gun to my head, I might even lean Gastelum just because I've seen him do well at the elite level. So for me, it's really hard to put that chalk on Cannonier.
Well, let me ask you one more thing, because everything you said makes total sense to me. It maybe there will become a day when we do want to take Jared as chalk, that we do see some value on him. But I do think that he gets a lot of credit because he puts those guys away that he's supposed to in devastating fashion. But then he has come up short, and it really hasn't even been, necessarily all that close when he's fought some of the elite guys. He has not really proven that he is on that level, everything that James just said. So how about stylistically then, James? So if we just kind of forget about like, oh, we know this about the other guy, like trying to rank them within the division, let's just rank them against one another. Stylistically, what do you see in this fight?
And if we were talking about the Costa fight, I would be a little bit more on Cannonier here, because Costa's in the same boat in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, he hasn't really proven. The win over Romero doesn't do it for me because he just outvolumed him. It's not hard to beat a guy that throws 6 punches around. You know what I mean? Like, and I know UL is amazing, but I'm getting off track. Stylistically, I feel like Kelvin has more ways to win, but I don't think he never utilizes those ways. You know what I mean? I think we're going to see a kickboxing match. You know, Kelvin can wrestle. I think he'd be crazy not to. I think both these guys would be crazy not to at least try to wrestle a little bit. But I think both these guys are going to be crazy, and neither one of them are going to wrestle, and we're going to see a kickboxing match, you know. And as a fan, I love that. You know, it's going to be great. But from my coaching perspective, I feel like Kelvin has more ways to win, but the danger factor, I think, lies towards Cannonier a little bit.
Yeah. James, I'm sorry, Nick, real quick. I brought up Jared's age, and maybe it's fair or unfair for me to do so. I don't really know. I mean, at 37 is not necessarily super old in MMA. I mean, we see guys have all kinds of success after 37. But I will say that it was worth writing down for me, just because 37 this is only going to be his second fight in 2 years. You know, I mean, he's only had the one fight against Robert Whittaker. He broke his arm in that fight. When a guy is inactive, and you're seeing that age start to creep up, and he's facing a guy who, Kelvin Gastelum, it feels like he should be 35, guys. He's 29. So when you have that,
no way,
he's 29.
He's 29 years old.
29. So when you have those circumstances with a guy who's been getting a little bit up there in age, inactive, and then fighting a guy who's very young still, Nick, do you consider that? Is there a way to even try to put that into the line?
You have to. I mean, there's no doubt about it, because there's a lot of people that are doing research that are going to kind of look at those things right there and kind of tip their hat that way anyway. They're looking for a reason to, come in and bet Cannonier or bet Gastelum or whatnot, right? So I think fading the age sometimes is a real thing for a lot of people. Now, I think Cannonier is one of those special fighters, though, meaning that age doesn't really affect him as bad. So he doesn't look like or fight like he's 37 years old. So I think he's physically in great shape. And like I said, with the weight cut, with the work he's put in, I don't really think he's kind of that age. I mean, in MMA years, these guys do take a beating, but I don't think he's been through those crazy wars either. So I think he's actually a young 37, if that makes sense. But you definitely have to factor that kind of stuff in, no doubt.
Nick, what can you tell me about the total? Where is it sitting? And then you got any thoughts on it?
Right now we have it at 4.5 under 15. So it's another one of those things that we can obviously see it going to the scorecards, but these guys both have firepower. It's a 5-round fight, and they could definitely finish before it hits a scorecard. So it's kind of tough. 4.5 rounds, I think, is about right for this fight, because I could see it hit the scorecards and be, like James said, basically a kickboxing matchup. With a lot of respect, both these guys are pretty durable, even though they do have firepower. But at the same time, all it takes is one clean shot from either one of these guys, and it could be over. So I think 4.5 is about right.
I can see a lot of fans. Well, first of all, fans just like to bet the under, right? You want to bet for a knockout, and then having these two guys where they're both well known, they're both known for their knockouts. They have nice highlight reels. James, do you think that's a good idea for anybody out there who's thinking, oh, maybe I don't have a strong feeling on the side, so I'm going to take the total? What would you say about that 4.5?
You guys know me. I usually lean towards the over, especially in these main events. And the 5 rounds, people. Like, I know a lot of the sharps like Nick and a couple other guys, it's 5 rounds, 25 minutes. For sure, that's a lot of time to knock somebody out. But like we've talked about before, is like when you get into that moment of like, hey, I'm going to be here for a little while. As a fighter, you kind of like settle, and we're not trying to kill each other anymore. We're just trying to make it through this, right? So I always want to lean towards the over on these. I say always, but a lot of the times I want to lean towards the over. I think this was priced just right, though. Like, I think it's going to go to a decision, but like I'm 50-50. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. Like Nick said, both these guys at have huge firepower. But talking about Jared's age, man, it's not the year of the car, it's the miles, man. He's not shown any ounce of fading to me at all. Like I know some of the guys like to bet on their stats, like the year gap. You know what I mean? I know there's guys that do that. But Jared hasn't shown even an ounce of that to me, man. Like I said, he hasn't been in these wars, and I actually think the time in between fights, the layoffs actually help him because of that. He's not getting these like knockdown, drag out fights. Man, he's a 1969 Camaro with 500 miles on it. You know what I mean? He looks good, bro. He's ready to rock. So I don't think that's going to be a factor here.
Last thing I'll ask both of you on the main event, and I'll just very, very quick answer. But sitting here listening to you guys, if I was sitting here listening to the show, I'd be like, man, I kind of want to take Kelvin Gastelum, especially because we also know he's durable, So if I'm hearing from you, James, that he has more ways to win. He seems to be a little bit of a busier fighter. So on the scorecards, of course, that always helps. We're saying that there's a decent chance that this could go all 5 rounds. And if a fight does go 5 rounds, I would probably favor Gastelum on the scorecards. And you're getting the plus money. If it was an even fight, maybe not. But if you're getting plus money on Kelvin Gastelum, that's kind of what I'm hearing from you guys. Are either of you guys betting Kelvin Gastelum in this fight?
Yeah, I will. It'll be small. But I will. I mean, once again, from to me, these guys are the same from like a coach, from a fan, from a fighter. But from a betting perspective, man, getting Kelvin Gastelum at plus money is like, I almost feel like it's the same talk we had last week about Chiesa. Like if you get Michael Chiesa at plus money, it's almost like a no-brainer. And that doesn't always mean they're going to win, but it's sometimes, man, good plays don't always win. But to me, that's a good play. Kelvin Gastelum at plus money is a good play, no matter who he's fighting. If I can get him at plus money, it's a good play. Does that mean he's going to win? No, but it is a good play.
Nick, will you have any money on Kelvin?
I agree. Yes, small, but it's not going to be anything crazy either. Like I said, I think it's a very good match fight, but you have to chase the plus money there because it should be closer to a pick'em type of fight. And I undercut the market actually. Believe it or not, this fight opened minus 240 for Cannonier market wide, right? So that's ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, obviously the public and sharp bettors came in and bet Gastelum at the dog price. I undercut the market. I opened it around minus 155, and now we're sitting at minus 165. So I did want to attract some chalk action first, and then if we get some Gastelum money, which I'm expecting a lot more sharps, especially by fight day, to come in that way as well. So yes, I will be on Gastelum, but it won't be nothing major. But I think you have to take advantage of that plus money for sure.
All right, that gets us through the main event. I want to get your guys' best bets, but I do this from time to time. I just look up and down the card and say, I really like that fight. I would like to hear the guys talk about that fight. So in 30 seconds or less, Nick, give me your thoughts on Pantoja versus Royval, because that to me, that stands out as potential fight of the night. I really, really like that fight. So what do you think?
I love that fight.
What do you think of the line, and what do you think of how it goes?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that fight. I think it's going to be one of the best fights for sure, without a doubt. Right now, the line over at Circa is currently set at, Pantoja is minus 170 to come back on Royval at plus 150. And we have been getting two-way action on this fight too. Man, it's going to be firepower, right? A lot of fire. We say this often, but I think these two are definitely going to bring it offensively. There's no like pulling back for these guys, right? They always come forward. They're always aggressive. They always have finishing ability. Their defense isn't that great, to be honest with you, on both ends of it. I mean, they absorb a lot of punishment. They're tough guys, but I think this is going to be the fight to watch for sure. And there's probably going to be a finish along the way.
James, tell me something about this fight. How do you see it going?
Man, Royval is one of my teammates. He's my guy. This dude is a dog. It's like, to me, this is like 15 minutes of two squirrels just doing that. And I'm really stoked for this fight. I will say that Pantoja, in my opinion, is the toughest guy that Royval has fought so far. Stylistically, they match up really
Brandon
well.
Moreno, so that's quite a statement.
Yep, that's right.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's hard to put that in there because of the injury. You know what I mean? So it's like, they fought, but they didn't really fight. If that makes sense. I know he just fought Moreno, but Pantoja is a tough matchup for any of these guys. So I think this is Brandon's fight to really show everybody where he belongs in that division. I'm excited for this one a lot. Like, I'm really excited for this fight.
All right, let's get you guys' best bets. James, let's stick with you. Where are we going this week?
Man, I was just telling Brett when we got on the show, I was so stoked to get on here. I had my best bet picked, but I realized this for next week. So I scrambled this way, and I'm gonna go. I feel good about this. I still do feel good about this, but I'm gonna go Ro Roberts over Ignacio. I'm gonna chop this up. Bahama Mamas. I don't know. That's no disrespect to him. The kid is tough. The kid is super tough. He's
Bahamondes,
good.
I believe, is actually how you say it.
Bahamondes?
Yeah. Close enough. Go ahead, James.
Close enough. Ignacio is good. He's really good. I think it's too much too soon for him. Ro, I think, is being a little undervalued because he's had a couple questionable performances. Most of those come in which are grapplers, right? The grapplers are giving him issues. Inacio's not going to shoot on him. I think this is going to be a kickboxing match. Rose in the small cage, I think his pressure, he works off that jab really well. He's sharp. He's got sharp kickboxing. He's a dog. I really like him in this fight. I think the vet, the experience, this is going to be a little too much too soon for Inacio.
Super athletic Roberts as well, man. I mean, Roberts.
Insane. His hand speed's nuts, man.
The combination of size and speed he has. I mean, if he can put everything together, I know that there are people who are high on him, like moving forward as a potential force in that division, but he's just shown a little bit of a skill deficiency, like you mentioned, in the grappling department. So if he can shore that up, that guy's an exciting guy to watch. Nick, who is your best bet this week?
I agree. It's a rare time that we're both on the same best bet as well. So it's Roberts for me too. I think just stylistically, it's a better matchup for him. What James said, I mean, typically Roberts has, his struggles against grapplers. So he's not going to really have to have that situation occur here. I think he's actually the better grappler of the two. I think he's a better wrestler here. And I think the stand-up he's going to be just fine at. So I think across the board, he kind of checks those boxes and he should be the rightful favorite. So the price is a little short. It's sitting around -145, -150 right now. And there is some support fading Roberts. So that's another area that you want to look at, meaning that a lot of like public disrespect at this point is against Roberts. They think this guy's not as good as we thought. So they're disrespecting to the point where you have to take advantage of it the other way. So I agree with James. I think the best bet for this week is Roberts over Bahamondes. And again, on top of it, we have a little bit of a small bet on Gastelum. So we have a couple kind of, small leans or whatnot or plays on this card for this weekend.
Well, I mean, obviously, I would love to have as many picks as possible, but you got to like a double best bet. And you know what, though? Not saying that this is what happened, Nick, but I think I'm going to make you go first, because if I was the one on this show, I would just basically repeat everything James has said, because the guy has been on such fire lately.
It goes like this.
That's what I'd be doing.
That's why I almost started off by saying I wish you would have made me go first, because now everybody's thinking I'm copying James here with his fire recently.
No.
Why wouldn't I? I should be copying you right now, man. Exactly, right?
Nah, you guys know how it goes. It goes in waves, man. It goes in waves.
Yeah, but that's obviously that's not the case. I really believe that Roberts,
of course. Yeah. Well, it's been hot for James lately. I assume and expect it to continue. And we got a good card this weekend. The main event could end up being a really, really, really good fight, really impactful fight, obviously, in that middleweight division. And then we will be back next week. Yes, Giga Chikadze, and
I got a good pick for you guys. I had it 2 weeks in advance. Let's
main event, and James has already picked out his best bet for next week. So really looking forward to finding out what that one is. But next week, James, for that UFC Fight Night back here in Apex. So thank you for watching, guys, and please tune in next week for the next episode.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.